I am Ethan Turner, 28 years old, a software engineer living in Seattle. My life revolves around lines of code, intense meetings, and lonely evenings with a cup of black coffee. I like stability, clear plans, and having everything in life programmed the way I want. Or at least, I used to think so. I am not the adventurous type, nor am I someone who makes impulsive decisions. To me, love is like a mathematical equation. If the right conditions are met, the result will always be correct. And then I met Sophia, who completely shattered every formula I had ever known. She was a freelance graphic designer, a person filled with creativity, passion, and an uncontainable free spirit. Sophia had a radiant smile and eyes that sparkled as if they always hid some secret. She lived by her emotions, by the moment, without following any set rules. I used to think that our differences were what made us perfect together. But now, looking back, I wonder if I had been trying to force a puzzle piece that never truly fit. I met Sophia on a crisp October afternoon at a small cafe near Pike Place Market. It was drizzling, and the cafe was packed with people. As I stepped inside, holding a cup of hot coffee, I accidentally bumped into a woman who was bending down to adjust her bag. My coffee spilled all over her workspace. I panicked, stammering an apology, but instead of getting angry, she simply laughed. "It's just coffee. My laptop is still alive." That simple, light-hearted response left me speechless. I had expected frustration, or at least an annoyed glance, but instead, she calmly wiped the coffee off the table and resumed her work as if nothing had happened. That was how our story began. At first, our conversations revolved around simple topics: work, hobbies, favorite movies, and the books she was currently reading. Sophia loved art. She could spend hours in a cafe sketching the world around her with precise strokes on her iPad. And me? I loved precision, numbers, and algorithms. I spent my days writing lines of code, debugging complex systems that most people would find frustrating. I liked a structured life where everything had a clear answer. Yet, despite our differences, there was an undeniable connection between us. I loved listening to her talk about her artistic ideas, even though I barely understood them, and she patiently listened to me explain intricate coding problems as if they were the most fascinating things in the world. A few months later, I realized I didn't just like her, I loved her. One Friday night, I invited her to a movie. It was the first time I saw her wearing a long blue dress, her eyes reflecting the glowing lights from the theater screen. After the movie, we walked along the harbor, and I took her hand. "Sophia, I think I like you as more than just a friend." She was silent for a moment before smiling. "Ethan, you're so slow. I've been waiting for you to say that for a long time." And just like that, we fell in love. The years we spent together felt like a beautiful dream. After a year of dating, we moved in together into a small but cozy apartment in the heart of the city. I continued growing my career, while Sophia gradually made a name for herself in the graphic design industry. She loved decorating our apartment in a bohemian style, with vibrant paintings, small potted plants in every corner, and warm yellow fairy lights draped across the walls. At first, I found it strange, being used to a minimalist lifestyle, but eventually I grew to love the space she created. We spent our mornings sipping coffee by the window, talking about everything and nothing. In the evenings, we curled up on the couch, watching movies. She rested her head on my shoulder, holding a bag of popcorn, though I always ended up eating more than she did. Life wasn't always perfect. We had our share of arguments, our moments of frustration over trivial things. But no matter what, we always found our way back to each other. I had believed with all my heart that Sophia was the woman I would spend the rest of my life loving. One summer night, I decided to propose to her. I planned everything carefully: a romantic dinner on our rooftop, red wine, candlelight, and a small ring hidden in my pocket. I wasn't great at expressing emotions, but that night I poured my heart out to her. Sophia, you are the only person who makes my life meaningful. I can't imagine a future without you. Will you spend the rest of your life with me? She cried, nodded, and threw herself into my arms. Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes. That was the happiest moment of my life. The following days were filled with a sense of fulfillment. We started planning the wedding. Sophia envisioned an outdoor ceremony with pastel blue decorations, a small acoustic band, and strings of twinkling lights hanging from the trees. I had never seen her so happy. But that happiness didn't last long. At first, Sophia was enthusiastic about wedding preparations. She constantly sent me pictures of wedding dresses, floral arrangements, and dream venues. But after a few months, things changed. She no longer seemed excited about the wedding. Whenever I asked about venues or the guest list, she brushed it off, casually. "We still have time, don't worry about it." I started noticing other things. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages I never got to see. She cancelled plans more frequently, work late, visiting her mum, vague excuses that didn't seem too suspicious at first, but began adding up. Then came the night that shattered everything. We were out with friends, playing a simple party game. Someone asked, if you could go back and relive a past relationship, who would it be? Sophia laughed and without hesitation said a name I never expected to hear: Logan. For a few seconds after Sophia said that name, the entire room fell into silence. It was a game, a stupid party game meant for light-hearted fun. But that name, Logan, hit me harder than I expected. I looked at her, waiting for some kind of clarification, a laugh, or even a teasing remark to downplay what she had just said. But all she did was giggle awkwardly, as if realizing too late that her words had landed like a gut punch. "I mean, not that I'd actually want to," she added hastily. "It's just, he was a significant part of my past, you know?" A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed, trying to break the tension. One of our friends joked, "Oof, tough answer, Ethan. Hope you're not taking that too seriously." I forced a chuckle, but inside, I wasn't laughing. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying that moment over and over. Next to me, Sophia slept soundly, as if she hadn't just resurrected the ghost of an ex who should have stayed buried. Why Logan? I wasn't the jealous type. Everyone had a past, and I had never been the kind of boyfriend who obsessed over exes. But something about this didn't sit right. Logan wasn't just any ex. He was the guy who had cheated on Sophia in college, the one she had spent months crying over, swearing she'd never look back. And yet here she was, looking back. I closed my eyes and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just a dumb answer in a game. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This wasn't the first time Logan's name had come up. A few weeks ago, I had walked into the living room to find Sophia staring at her phone, lost in thought. When I asked what she was looking at, she had quickly locked the screen and set it down. "Oh, just old photos from college," she had said, with a casual shrug. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, but now, those little moments, her distraction, her sudden secrecy, began forming a picture I didn't want to see. The next few days, I tried to push the thought away, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Sophia was on her phone more than usual. Whenever I glanced over, she'd angle the screen away, locking it as if out of habit. When I asked who she was texting, she'd give vague answers. Just some work stuff. Oh, it's nothing, just a friend from college. I promised to check in with an old co-worker. It wasn't outright suspicious, at least not at first. But then came the excuses. She started canceling plans more often. Dinners, movie nights, weekend outings. Suddenly, she was always too busy. Sorry, babe, I have to work late tonight. My mom needs me this weekend. Family stuff, you know. I just have a lot on my plate right now. Wedding planning is stressing me out. At first, I believed her, but when it kept happening, the doubt started creeping in. One Friday night, I came home earlier than expected. Normally, Sophia would be on the couch, curled up with her laptop or sketching in her notebook. But when I walked in, she was just sitting there, staring blankly at the screen, completely zoned out. "Hey, I'm home," I said. She flinched. Not a big movement, but enough for me to notice. "Oh, you're early," she said, like it was a bad thing. I shrugged it off and walked into the kitchen, starting to prep dinner. But the silence in the apartment was heavier than usual. Normally, she would ask about my day, tell me about hers, but tonight, there was nothing. Finally, I turned around and asked, "Is everything okay?" She hesitated, then closed her laptop and looked at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." My stomach dropped. I could feel it coming, the kind of conversation that you can never really prepare for. I walked over and sat down across from her. "All right," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath, as if choosing her words carefully, and then she just said it. "I've been thinking about us, and about Logan." I almost laughed. Logan? Again. This had to be some kind of joke. "Logan? What about him?" She bit her lip and avoided my gaze. "I think I need some time to figure things out." I stared at her. "Figure things out?" "I want to take a break," she said quietly. "I need to see if there's still something there with him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want to take a break to date your ex?" My voice came out flatter than I expected. "It's not like that," she rushed to explain. I need to be sure I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I promise I'll come back." That was when I realized just how deep her audacity went. She genuinely thought I would sit around and wait while she tested the waters with someone who had already betrayed her once. I inhaled slowly, keeping my voice measured. "So what does this break mean to you?" She straightened up slightly, like she had rehearsed this conversation in her head. "I think we need space to figure things out," she said. "I'll take some time to see if my feelings for Logan are real, and you can use this time to reflect on us, too." I blinked. Reflect? She wanted me to reflect while she ran off to explore her ex? "Sophia, do you even hear yourself right now?" My voice was still quiet, but sharp. She sighed. "It's not about you doing anything wrong, Ethan. This is about me figuring out what I need." She had practiced this. The way she spoke, the way she avoided eye contact. It was clear that she had already decided this was happening. She just expected me to accept it. "You know this sounds insane, right?" I muttered. "You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play What If with some guy who treated you like garbage." Her expression tightened, and for the first time, I saw how stubborn she could be. "I'm not asking for permission, Ethan," she said. "I'm telling you what I need." That one landed differently. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was angry. I stood up and started pacing, trying to calm myself. I stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. "You owe it to yourself?" I let out a hollow laugh. "And what about what you owe me?" "I never said you weren't good enough," she argued, her voice rising. "But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now, I'm not." I took a deep breath, then sat back down. "You know what? Sure," I said blandly. "Take your break." She blinked, caught off guard by how quickly I agreed. "Really?" "Yeah," I said, my face emotionless. "If that's what you need." She hesitated, then stood up. "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time, okay?" "Okay," I replied simply. She lingered for a moment, as if expecting me to say something more, but I didn't. A few minutes later, the front door closed behind her, and she had no idea. I wasn't going to be waiting. The moment Sophia walked out the door, I sat in silence, staring at the space she had just occupied. I had told her I was fine with the break. I had agreed without arguing. I had even managed to keep my face emotionless when she said she needed to explore her feelings. But now that I was alone, the weight of it hit me. For 4 years, Sophia had been the center of my world. I had planned my future around her. And in one conversation, she had made it clear that I was nothing more than a backup option. Someone to put on hold while she chased after a past that had already betrayed her once. I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled slowly. I could fall apart, or I could move forward. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a choice. I grabbed my phone and dialed the one person I knew would talk sense into me, Noah. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, what's up?" I hadn't planned on explaining everything right away, but as soon as I heard his voice, the words just spilled out. I told him everything. About the weird behavior, the increasing distance, the way she had mentioned Logan during that stupid party game. And finally, how she had asked for a break to figure out if she still had feelings for him. Noah was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. "Dude, you know she's gonna try to come back, right?" I scoffed. "What makes you so sure?" "Because that's how people like her work. She doesn't want to lose you. She just wants to see if something better is out there. And when she realizes it's not, she'll expect you to be right where she left you." I let his words sink in. Sophia hadn't broken up with me. She had asked for a break. She had deliberately left a door open, assuming I would just stand in place, waiting for her to come back through it. Noah was right, and that was exactly why I needed to make sure that door was shut. "So what are you gonna do?" Noah asked. I looked around the apartment, the place that Sophia and I had built together, the furniture, the decorations, the little touches of her that were everywhere. Then I made my decision. "I'm going to get rid of everything that reminds me of her," I said. The first thing to go was the pictures. I walked through the apartment, taking down framed photos from the shelves, the nightstands, the walls, pictures of us at the beach, at concerts, at Christmas gatherings, memories that once meant everything to me. I didn't tear them up or throw them in anger. I simply put them all in a box and taped it shut. Next were her clothes. She had left plenty behind, assuming she'd come back for them eventually. I packed them neatly, along with the little knickknacks she had scattered around the apartment. The live, laugh, love sign she had insisted on hanging in the hallway, gone. The throw pillows she loved, but I always found unnecessary, packed away. Then came the biggest decision of all, the apartment. Sophia and I had chosen this place together, but I was the one who had bought it. The lease was in my name, and now this place felt more like a shrine to a relationship that no longer existed. So I called a real estate agent. "I want to list my apartment for sale," I told her. It was time for a fresh start. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Sophia. "Sophia, hey, hope you're doing okay, that was it. No, I miss you. No, I regret what I said." Just a casual check-in, as if she hadn't just shattered our relationship the night before. I didn't reply. Instead, I got up, grabbed a few more boxes, and kept packing. As the days passed, word spread among our friends. Some were shocked, others had apparently seen it coming, but the general consensus was the same. No one thought I was making a mistake by moving on. One night, I got a call from a mutual friend, Sarah. "Hey, I just wanted to check in," she said, cautiously. "I saw Sophia the other day. She didn't seem as happy as she thought she'd be." I paused. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. She was talking about how she thought the break would be good for both of you, but she didn't sound sure of herself. And well, she asked about you." I could almost hear the hesitation in Sarah's voice, like she wasn't sure how much she should be telling me. I smiled to myself. Of course Sophia was checking in. She had assumed I'd be sitting here, waiting for her to figure things out. She hadn't expected me to actually start moving forward. "Thanks for letting me know, Sarah," I said. "So, are you going to talk to her?" I glanced around my half-empty apartment, at the moving boxes, at the life I was building without her. Then I said, "No." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I wasn't angry either. I was just done. And something told me that Sophia hadn't expected that. The first time I saw Sophia again, after she walked out, it wasn't planned. It had been nearly 2 weeks since she packed her bag and left, and in that time, I had done exactly what I promised myself. I moved on. My apartment was half empty now, most of the furniture already sold or packed away in preparation for my move. The only things left were the essentials: a bed, a couch, my desk, and a few personal belongings that weren't tied to her. I had started going out more, reconnecting with old friends, hitting the gym again. I wasn't drowning in work or distractions, but I was building a new life, piece by piece. And for the first time in a long while, I felt in control. And then, just when I least expected it, there she was. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I had stopped by a coffee shop near my office to grab a quick espresso. The place was busy, filled with the usual weekend crowd. Students hunched over laptops, couples sharing pastries, friends chatting over steaming mugs. I was seated by the window, half focused on responding to emails, when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. "Ethan?" I froze. Slowly I looked up. Sophia was standing there, looking different. Not in an obvious way. She still had the same wavy brown hair, the same blue eyes, the same casual but effortlessly put-together style. But there was something off about her. She looked hesitant, uncertain. And for the first time, I wasn't the one feeling that way. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She smiled, but it wasn't the confident, radiant smile I used to know. It was forced, like she was trying to read me, trying to figure out where I stood. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said, glancing at my laptop. "Are you working?" I nodded. "Yeah, just catching up on a few things." She hesitated. "Can I sit?" I paused for just a second. Then, without a word, I closed my laptop and gestured to the empty chair across from me. I wasn't sure why I let her sit. Maybe a part of me was curious. Maybe I wanted to see where this was going. Or maybe I just wanted to hear her say it. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, eyes flickering toward me every few seconds. She looked nervous. That was new. "So, how have you been?" she finally asked. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "I've been good." She nodded slowly, as if she hadn't expected that answer. "That's good." I didn't ask how she was. The silence stretched between us, and I could tell she was struggling to find the right words. Then she sighed, setting down her spoon. "Ethan, I wanted to check in. I feel like we left things unfinished." I cut in. She looked at me. "I guess." I let out a small breath, shaking my head. "See, that's the thing, Sophia. I don't think there was anything unfinished. You made your decision, and I made mine." She flinched slightly at my words, like she wasn't expecting me to be so direct. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly. I studied her face, trying to figure out if she really believed that. "Then why did you?" I asked simply. She looked down, fiddling with the sleeve of her sweater. "I thought I needed space. I thought I needed to figure things out before committing to something so big." I nodded. "And? Did you figure things out?" She swallowed, and that hesitation, that half-second of uncertainty, was all the answer I needed. "I made a mistake," she admitted. There it was, the words I knew were coming. The realization that she had been chasing a fantasy, only to realize too late that reality wasn't waiting for her. I should have felt something. Vindicated, angry, triumphant. But all I felt was nothing. I had spent days, weeks, processing what happened. I had already made my peace with it. And now, as she sat across from me, saying the words I once would have given anything to hear, they meant nothing. "Ethan," she said softly, leaning forward, "I miss you." I met her gaze, my face unreadable. "You miss me? Or do you miss knowing I was always there?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What?" I sighed. "Sophia, let's be honest here. You didn't leave because of me. You left because you thought there was something better out there. And now that you've realized there isn't, you're coming back." She shook her head quickly. "No, it's not like that. Did you ever sleep with him?" She froze. A flicker of something, guilt, shame, crossed her face. And in that moment, I knew the answer. She hadn't just wanted to figure things out. She had tried, and it hadn't worked out. "It didn't mean anything," she whispered. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yeah, that's what I thought." She reached across the table suddenly, her fingers brushing mine. "Ethan, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a mistake. I see that now. I don't want to lose you." For a brief second, I saw a flash of the girl I had once loved, the one I had planned a future with. But she wasn't that girl anymore, and neither was I. I pulled my hand away. "You already did." Sophia's breath hitched. She searched my face for any sign of weakness, any hint that I was just saying these things, that I didn't mean them, but she found nothing. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she let out a shaky breath and nodded. "I guess I deserve that." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I picked up my coffee, took one last sip, then stood up. "Take care, Sophia." And then I walked out the door. I didn't look back. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit me, crisp and refreshing. I breathed in deeply, letting it fill my lungs. That night, I felt nothing but relief. I didn't stay up replaying the conversation. I didn't wonder if I had made the right choice. I didn't even feel sad, because for the first time since this whole thing started, I was truly free. And somehow I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear from her. It had been a week since I last saw Sophia. 7 full days of complete silence. No texts, no calls, no "how have you been" messages, nothing. I thought that would be the end of it, and for a while it felt like it was. Since our conversation at the cafe, I had been more certain than ever that I had made the right decision. I didn't replay her words in my head. I didn't wonder if I had been too harsh. I didn't feel a pang of nostalgia when I passed places we used to go. Instead, I focused on myself. Packing, selling my apartment, wrapping up work, making plans for the next chapter of my life, one that had nothing to do with her. I was out with Noah that night, grabbing a drink at a quiet bar downtown. We were talking about my move when I saw her. Sophia. She was standing near the entrance, scanning the room. And when her eyes landed on me, she hesitated just for a second before walking over. Noah noticed immediately. He let out a low whistle. "Man, she's persistent," I sighed. "Yeah, looks like it." "You want me to stay?" I shook my head. "I got this." He nodded and gave me a quick pat on the back before stepping away. Sophia stopped in front of me, shifting from foot to foot. She looked nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked. I studied her for a moment. Then, with a slow exhale, I nodded. "All right." We moved outside, where it was quieter. The air was crisp, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. She was the first to break the silence. "I didn't want to text," she said softly. "I figured you wouldn't answer." "You're right," I said simply. "I wouldn't have." She swallowed hard. I needed to see you." "Why?" She hesitated, looking away for a moment before turning back to me. "Because I still love you." A few weeks ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they meant nothing. I didn't respond, so she kept going. "Ethan, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I know that I probably don't deserve another chance. But I swear to you, I've never regretted anything more in my life." I exhaled slowly. "Is that why you're here? To say you regret it?" She nodded. "I regret everything. I regret leaving. I regret thinking I needed space. I regret—" She paused, and for the first time, her voice wavered. "I regret choosing him over you." There it was. The truth, laid out bare. I studied her, waiting for some kind of reaction inside myself. Anger, sadness, longing, nothing. "I appreciate you saying that," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." She blinked. "Ethan, please," she stepped forward. "Just hear me out. We were so good together. What we had, it was real. And I know I ruined it. But we can fix this. We can try again." I shook my head. "No, we can't." Her lips parted slightly. "Why not?" I sighed. "Because the person I was when I loved you doesn't exist anymore." She searched my face for any sign of weakness, any crack in my resolve, but she found none. "I don't expect things to go back to how they were," she said quickly. I don't want to lose you forever." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. "Sophia, you lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. That part of me, the part that once wanted to fix things, to reassure her, was gone. "So that's it?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, that's it." She let out a shaky breath, nodding slowly. "I guess I deserve that." She turned around and walked away. I didn't watch her disappear. Instead, I stepped back into the bar, where Noah was waiting. "All good?" he asked. I smiled, taking a deep breath. "Yeah," I said, "all good." And for the first time, I actually meant it. San Francisco welcomed me with a crisp breeze, carrying a strange yet soothing feeling. I stepped out of the airport, dragging my suitcase behind me, and took a deep breath. There was no regret, no lingering attachments, just me and a new journey ahead. As the taxi wove through unfamiliar streets, memories of everything that had led me here surfaced in my mind. There was a time when I believed Sophia was my future. I remembered the quiet mornings we spent drinking coffee by the window, the late-night conversations about dreams we were convinced we would chase together. Back then, I thought love was like a mathematical equation. If you followed the right steps, the outcome would always be certain. But love isn't a formula, and people change. The signs were always there. Sophia was someone who longed for freedom, constantly seeking something new. I thought I could be her anchor, but the truth was, she had never really wanted to stay. She left, not because I did something wrong, but because she needed to be sure I was the right choice. And by the time she realized I was no longer there, waiting. It took me a long time to understand that it wasn't my fault. And now, I no longer care. I wasn't running away from the past. I was simply moving forward. The new apartment was much smaller than my old one, but I liked it. A space just right, quiet, free from any remnants of my past. I pushed open the window, letting the breeze flow through, carrying the scent of salt from the bay and freshly brewed coffee from the cafe below. I placed my suitcase down and stood in the middle of the empty living room, letting the silence settle around me. I no longer felt empty. I was no longer trapped in old memories. I no longer questioned if I had done something wrong. I put on some soft music, made myself a cup of coffee, and sank into the sofa. There was no urgency, no expectations from anyone. For the first time in a long while, I felt an absolute sense of peace. 2 days later, I met Noah for one last drink before leaving Seattle. We chose a familiar bar, a place that had once been our usual hangout spot. "Man, I still can't believe you're actually leaving," he said, shaking his head as he took a sip of his beer. I chuckled. "Yeah, I didn't think I'd make the decision this quickly either." He studied me for a moment before raising an eyebrow. "Be honest, Ethan, did you ever imagine yourself at this point?" I hesitated for a second, then shook my head. "No. There was a time when I thought I'd stay here forever. That Sophia and I would get married, buy a big house, adopt a dog, have 2 kids. My future had always seemed so clear." I took a sip of my beer, exhaling slowly. But you know what? When everything fell apart, I realized something I had never considered before. What my future would look like if I was in it alone. Noah nodded thoughtfully. "And now?" I smiled. "Now, that future doesn't seem so bad at all." He let out a small laugh and lifted his glass. "That's what I like to hear. I'm proud of you, man." We clinked our glasses together. This wasn't a goodbye. This was simply a necessary change. That night, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at the glowing lights of San Francisco. Car horns echoed below. A group of friends laughed on the sidewalk. A street musician played a soft jazz tune in the distance. I inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air settle into my lungs. There was no Sophia, no past, only the present, only me. I had once thought that someday, maybe I would love again. But not today. Today, I just wanted to love life itself. I stepped back inside and closed the window. I had truly closed the last chapter of my life, and that was enough.